We all have blood. It's this river of life that's constantly flowing through us, delivering all the good stuff and fighting off the bad stuff. But have you ever stopped to think about what happens when that system breaks down? Well, in this explainer, we're going to dive into what happens when the blood runs rogue. So, what does happen when your body's most essential workers go rogue? I mean, when the very cells that are designed to protect you and sustain you actually start causing chaos instead. For millions of people living with major blood disorders, that question is their everyday reality. To really get what's going on, first we need to meet the crew. I want you to think of your bone marrow as this huge internal factory that's working 24/7, just constantly churning out these specialized cells that keep you alive. Now, this factory has three main types of workers on the payroll. First up, you've got your oxygen carriers. Those are your red blood cells. They're like the delivery fleet, rushing oxygen to every single corner of your body. Then you have the infection fighters, your white blood cells. This is your security team, your defense force. And finally, the bleeding stoppers, the platelets. They're the emergency repair crew, patching up any leaks the second they happen. And really, the single most critical job of this whole system is just making these cells. So when that factory has a production problem, it affects everything. We're talking about everything from your energy levels to your ability to shake off a simple cold. All right, so let's dive into our first category of production problems, issues with the red cells. When these guys are in trouble, it creates this massive supply chain crisis for the one resource your body absolutely cannot live without, oxygen. This crisis has a name you've probably heard before, anemia. It's basically when you don't have enough healthy red blood cells to get the oxygen where it needs to go. And that failure to deliver is what directly causes those feelings of exhaustion, weakness, and just being completely wiped out that so many people feel. Now let's drill down into a very specific and really severe type of anemia, sickle cell disease. This is a genetic disorder where, essentially, the blueprints for building those red blood cell delivery trucks have a critical flaw in them. And what's so wild is the visual difference you see here. A single tiny error in the genetic code causes these red blood cells, which should be smooth, flexible little discs, to become rigid, sticky, and bent into this sickle shape, especially when oxygen is low. It's like they go from being a soft, pliable inner tube to a hard, sharp-edged boomerang. So how does this one little shape change cause so much trouble? Well, it sets off this terrible chain reaction. Something triggers it, like dehydration or stress, and the cells change shape. Because they're now rigid and sticky, they start clumping up, creating a literal traffic jam inside your tiniest blood vessels. The result? Blood flow gets blocked, oxygen can't get through, and that leads to excruciating pain and, over time, organ damage. And it gets worse. On top of causing these blockages, these faulty cells are also incredibly fragile. Just look at the difference in lifespan. A normal red blood cell works for about 120 days. A sickle cell, it's lucky if it lasts 20. This constant, rapid destruction of cells is why patients are in a state of chronic anemia. And the cumulative effect of all this, the crises, the blockages, the chronic anemia, it's just devastating. The average life expectancy for an adult with sickle cell disease is a staggering 22 years less than for an adult without it. That one number really tells you everything you need to know about the profound, lifelong impact of this disease. Okay, let's switch gears. We've talked about the oxygen carriers. Now let's look at the infection fighters. When white blood cells go rogue, it's not a supply chain problem anymore. No, this is a hostile takeover of the entire factory. We call this takeover leukemia. It's a type of blood cancer where the bone marrow's production line for white blood cells just goes completely haywire. It starts pumping out enormous quantities of these immature, and here's the key, non-functional cells called blasts. You can think of them like ghost employees. They're on the payroll, they're taking up space, they're using up resources, but they don't actually do any work. So a patient can have a sky-high white blood cell count, but their body's completely defenseless. To really feel the scale of this problem, just look at what a healthy factory floor looks like. It's this beautiful, balanced system. Red blood cells make up the bulk of the workforce, right around 45%. And our security team, the white blood cells, they're a tiny but incredibly powerful 1%. And now, look at this. This is the factory under hostile takeover. In acute leukemia, it's an absolute flood. Those useless blast cells have completely overwhelmed the system, swelling from just 1% of the population to an unbelievable 85%. They have physically crowded out every other production line. The factory floor is just clogged with workers who not only don't do their jobs, but actively prevent anyone else from doing theirs. And the consequences of this overcrowding are immediate and system-wide. With the red blood cell line shut down, you get anemia and fatigue. With the platelet line shut down, the emergency repair crews are gone, which leads to easy bruising and bleeding. And even though the factory is swarming with what looks like a security force, the building is defenseless because they're all untrained and useless. This is why patients get so many dangerous infections. Every major symptom comes right back to this one central problem: overcrowding. So when you're facing a supply chain crisis on one hand or a complete hostile takeover on the other, how do you even begin to fight back? Let's talk about the strategies for getting that factory back online. For sickle cell disease, a huge part of the fight is actually prevention. A lot of the management is just trying to avoid those crisis triggers we talked about. This means staying incredibly well hydrated, avoiding extreme heat or cold, and calling a doctor at the very first sign of an illness before it has a chance to escalate. For leukemia, though, prevention just isn't on the table. The treatment has to be far more drastic. In many cases, it means nothing less than a total system reboot of the entire factory. And that reboot is a procedure called a hematopoietic stem cell transplant. It's an incredibly intense process. First, what's called conditioning, usually high-dose chemo, is used to completely wipe out the patient's faulty bone marrow. Then, on transplant day, healthy stem cells from a donor are infused, kind of like a regular blood transfusion. Those new cells are amazing. They find their way to the marrow, and over the next few months begin to build a brand new, healthy blood and immune system from scratch. And here's something that surprises a lot of people, a really common misconception. You might assume that you need a matching blood type for a stem cell transplant, but that's actually not the case. The thing that's absolutely crucial is a close match in what's called tissue type. And this is exactly why having a diverse registry of donors from every single ethnic background is so incredibly important. It just dramatically increases the chance that a patient out there can find their one perfect, life-saving match. And all of this brings us to one final huge question. If we understand our blood is this incredible, intricate delivery and defense system, and we know exactly how it can go wrong, what comes next? How are we going to engineer it in the future to stop these devastating problems before they even have a chance to start?